Today's episode is all about the baby Preds. We got a couple of prospects vying for an NCAA title, a couple of European prospects getting hot, and the question on everyone's mind, what's up with the Milwaukee Admirals right now? We'll talk about it today on today's Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making the Locked On Predators podcast your first listen of the day every single day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we want to give a special shout out to our loyal Locked On Pred heads, the everydayers who tune into every single show. We love you guys and appreciate the support you give us week in and week out. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio. My normal partner in crime, Ann Kimmel, is off this week. So we're going to bring in a special guest to talk some Preds prospects. You know him as Preds Prospects on Twitter, also at On The Future PBR. Eric from Penalty Box Radio. Eric, thank you for joining us, man.
Yeah, of course. Always happy to come chat prospects.
Yeah. And there's certainly a lot to talk about right now because we have some drama in Milwaukee after the long winning streak was snapped. We have a couple of Predators making some noise in their NCAA conference championships right now, and a couple of European boys making some noise and maybe raising their stock a little bit. So a lot to talk about today. Do want to mention off the bat that today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. All right, Eric, let's start a little bit up north in the great land of cheese and dairy and Pabst Blue Ribbon, I guess. The land of Milwaukee. The last time we had you on the show, things were going fantastic for the Admirals. They're in the middle of an epic winning streak. It just didn't seem like they could lose. They were, their streak was the talk of the AHL. You had guys like Askarov just making highlight reel saves every single night. Since that winning streak ended, 6 games, 5 losses for the Admirals, including a fairly bad one against the Chicago Wolves the other night. So, Eric, what's been going on with the Admirals?
Yeah, I mean, it probably is like a natural rate of like attrition after a 19-game winning streak that you're gonna like lose a few bad ones. I wouldn't really be concerned all that too much. It's a pretty crazy month for them. They've got like 15 games in March, which is pretty insane. Schedule. They still got a pretty healthy lead on the division and are still probably the second best team in the league overall behind Hershey. And, it'd be one thing, I think, if they were like getting shut out in all these games, but with a lot of guys out of the lineup, your Jankowskis, they obviously traded Denis Gurianov and are missing guys like Fyodor Fedchkov to injury. Campbell missed the last game. They're still, scoring at a decent rate. I think it's just been a couple bad games, and they should hopefully be getting back on track here soon.
Yeah, you mentioned, some of the changes and stuff in the lineup. Of course, Spencer Stastny recalled to the Nashville Predators yesterday to take over for Dante Fabro. Jankowski, who was, maybe arguably their best player for, long this year. He's now in the NHL to help the Preds with their stretch run. And then, Denis Gurianov is no more traded this past deadline in a minor league deal. How much of a role does that play in a team like Milwaukee? Because I just feel like it's really easy. We hear about Preds injuries. We hear about them calling up guys to get things going. And it just seems like you forget that it kind of causes a ripple effect all throughout the rest of the organization, not just Milwaukee, but Atlanta as well.
Yeah, for sure. And, it's easier to have, like, when you get injuries in the NHL, you can call up guys who can score goals at the very least at the AHL level, right? And
Right.
when you get injuries at the AHL level, oftentimes a lot of those depth guys aren't necessarily goal scorers, right? So for instance, like Milwaukee's calling up guys like Navran Mutter and from Atlanta, who, isn't really like an offensive threat per se, right? Anthony Angelo came back from injury. He's not really like a top scorer per se. They're playing guys like Ty Felleber and Kevin Wall, who are nice pieces, but like aren't ever going to like lead a top of an AHL lineup in scoring or anything like that. So I think for them, it's just a matter of like, it's cliche, right? But like the rest of their top guys need to step up. They brought in Wade Allison to kind of replace Denis Gurianov. Like he's, going to get settled in. Afanasyev has cooled down a little bit since his kind of hot play during the winning streak. And guys like Tomasino and Parsonen, and really, especially like Joachim Kemmel, it's now their kind of chance to take this team through the rest of the month. I think the first two have been really great in their time since being sent down by Nashville. And Kemmel, you'd like to see a little more from him. I think he's been good this year, but it's certainly another step to take. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were kind of waiting for that breakout year for Kemmel, especially because he did so well when he came over from Europe at the end of last year. I think everybody was just sort of ready for that breakout season. But speaking of breakout seasons, there are a couple of young players on Milwaukee. Maybe the two most talked about guys on Milwaukee this year, not named Yaroslav Askarov. You got Zach LaRue and you got Fedor Svechkov, 2 first-round picks for the Nashville Predators drafted the same year. Eric, I think LaRue specifically is somebody that it feels like his rookie year has really surprised some people, or at least maybe he was a bit further along in his development than maybe what some fans around the league initially thought when he went to the pros this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's even surprised me a little bit. I thought that he could become a really good AHL player in a short amount of time, but I was a little concerned that he just didn't quite have the foot speed to kind of elevate him over bigger guys, over guys that maybe have a little more skill. He's got really good hands, and I think he's overall a really great player, but I've seen like a bit of an acceleration from him on the ice this year that I really just didn't expect. So, I can't speak to what he was doing in the off season and in terms of training, but I think it's really worked. And he's not just cashing in on the power play. I think 22 of his 38 points or so have been primary ones at even strength. So he's contributing in a lot of ways. I think, there's still obviously some concern about his temper, but I've been really impressed with him this year. So.
Yeah, and let's pivot to Svechkov because this was the guy drafted before Zach LaRue, and I think everybody sort of just forgot Svechkov existed when he came into the league this year. And it's another person that it's just I watch him. He's got good numbers, 13 goals, 20 assists in 45 games, but I don't know. It just still feels like we don't exactly know what the ceiling is going to be for him at this point.
Yeah, he's a curious case. Last offseason, I kind of did like a 10 pressing questions for Preds prospects going into the season. And my one for him was, which version of him would show up in North America in the regular season last year in the KHL. He just looked a step behind. Granted, he wasn't being given that much opportunity, but then when he was kind of sent down to the VHL or even playing juniors, he still just like wasn't dominating the way he should be at his age. But then in the VHL playoffs, when his team went on to win the championship, he was unbelievable, scoring a ton of goals, not just being a playmaker that we know he can be, not just being, defensively responsible the way we know he can be. And I think overall it's been clear it's the latter that's shown up. 13 goals is probably not where I would have expected him to land this year. I think that's fourth on the team, third on the team behind LaRue, Jankowski, and Afanasyev, tied with Kemmel. Yeah, so not exactly where I would have expected. Would have expected a lot more assists, but he's really taken. I think the opportunity to apply a lot of his intelligence for the game, particularly off the puck, in the offensive zone and using that to beat defenses here in the AHL. Obviously he's injured right now. Probably going to be out for a little longer, but I've liked a lot of what I've seen from him this year.
Yeah. One more guy I want to talk to you real quick, and it's a name that Ann and I have talked about a lot on the show. And that's Juuso Parssinen, ya boy. Obviously, I think a lot of people were maybe a little bit, I don't want to say surprised, but maybe disappointed to find him getting demoted to Milwaukee, especially for how well he played last year. What have you seen from him since he's been reassigned to the Admirals?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing for him when getting sent down, right, again, cliche, was like confidence. Like, it's not like this guy like forgot how to score goals or forgot how to handle the puck. He's never been like he's never had the best he's never been the fastest player on the ice, but like he's a workhorse, and he finds a way to get to areas where he needs to score. And you could tell like in Nashville, that was just kind of like frustrating him, right? That he wasn't finding those opportunities and taking advantage of him. So he goes to Milwaukee, gets a chance to play on the power play, play on the penalty kill, center a top line, even strength. And all of a sudden he's basically a point per game player. He's scoring, he's scoring at a good rate. He's taking slap shots from the hash marks on his shorthanded goals. Like you can tell there's just like a bit of swagger back to his game. And I think those kind of hammering out those details in the AHL where it looks like he's going to be for the rest of the year will be really helpful when it comes to the 2024-25 season.
Yeah. Let's hope the Admirals can turn things around because, as you mentioned, I think a lot of people have their fingers crossed for a Calder Cup run this year. And it's a big one against Manitoba tonight. So we will see what happens there. But there is some other big hockey going on right now, and it's in the NCAA. We have a couple of Preds vying for the NCAA title. We will dive into those in just 1 second. First, though, I want to mention, again, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Going to sporting events, now that the weather is warming up, is going to be awesome. Buying tickets to those events, that may suck, unless you use Gametime. Gametime is the ticketing app that takes the stress out of buying tickets. How many times have you gone to an unfamiliar stadium or concert venue? You're not really sure where your seats are, and you wind up just, finding a good deal, but getting stuck, with bad seats behind a pole, something with a terrible view. Gametime doesn't let that happen. Gametime shows you the exact view from your seat, so you know exactly what you're going to expect when you walk in. They don't have a bunch of hidden fees. They're all in prices, show you your total up front so you know what you're getting before you buy. And they have flash deals every day on concerts, sporting events, comedy shows, theater, and much, much more. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Also want to mention today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. You can bet on all of your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and much, much more. And, of course, it's not just basketball. You can bet on all of the NHL action. You can bet on college basketball coming up. Baseball right around the corner. Thank goodness. Pretty much any sport you can think of. FanDuel has amazing parlays, prop bets, and moneyline bets for you to choose from. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, we are talking prospects with Eric from Penalty Box Radio. You've probably seen his work on Twitter at OnTheFuturePBR. Eric, let's turn our attention to college, shall we? We have a couple of Preds prospects vying for the NCAA title. One in particular who seems to be on the cusp of making an appearance for the Nashville Predators, or at the very least, the Milwaukee Admirals, sooner rather than later, is Ryan Ufko, who is at UMass right now. This is a guy that I think a lot of Preds fans have had their eye on for a very long time. He's got a tough matchup against Providence this weekend. Yeah, what have you seen from Ufko this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think he has grown unsurprisingly into one of the best kind of all-around defenders in college hockey. It's hard not to watch him each night and be impressed with how poised he is. You're not going to look at his point totals and be like, oh my God, he's not a point per game player, although he has a decent stat line. But he plays in all situations for UMass, has for the past few years. He anchors their first pair. He plays, I think he's averaged this year 26 minutes a night, which is truly crazy, playing usually back-to-back nights on weekends in college hockey. And I mean, he's a shutdown guy. He's a good guy in transition. He's a weapon on the power play. Very similar to Spencer Stastny, honestly, not quite as good of a skater, but it's hard to be that good. But yeah, so UMass has a decent chance of making the NCAA tournament. Obviously, winning the Hockey East Conference tournament would secure their bid for sure. But regardless, it's a bit of a foregone conclusion that once his season ends, Nashville will be making a run to get him signed and in Nashville or Milwaukee this spring. So.
Yeah, you mentioned Spencer Stastny. It sounds like the Preds have done everything they can to try to get him into a full-time NHL role. Now, all of a sudden, you have Ufko coming behind. The future of the D is looking pretty good right now, Eric.
Yeah, I was kind of like curious about Trotz's comments the other day about them trying to restock on defense, which it's not to say that you should ever be like satisfied per se, but you got Stastny, you got Del Gaizo, who I think can be more of a depth guy. You've got Mullendijk, you've got Ufko. You've even got a guy like Kasper Kulanumi, who I think can be a depth option in that NHL too. So got a lot of options there, and they still have to play out Luke Schenn's contract for 3 more years. So
yeah, not ideal. Oh, and by the way, do you remember Tyson Barrie? Remember when he was on the Nashville Predators? Oh, wait, he's still on the Nashville Predators right now. Let's talk forwards, shall we? There's actually another defender I'm going to ask you about, but that's coming up in a different segment. Let's talk forwards, and let's talk Alex Campbell. As you mentioned, just hit the 20 goal mark not too long ago. He has been a big piece of the Northeastern lineup this year. Alex Campbell, that's a name I don't think a lot of Preds fans are familiar with, Eric, but, let us know what he's been doing this season and kind of what his outlook is moving forward.
Yeah, well, I've been a big fan of Campbell since he was taken in the 2019 draft. Really quick, agile guy, great hands, really good skill. He's not the strongest, but he's like really slippery. You kind of watch him and he just like seems to kind of like wiggle his way through defenders and into scoring areas. He played 3 years at Clarkson where I think he was good, particularly his sophomore season where he led the team in scoring. And then Clarkson's program kind of had a bit of a falling out last summer and he transferred to Northeastern. And before the season I wrote, that was a really big choice for him because, arguably Hockey East is the toughest conference in college. And it's a lot different than the ECAC that he was playing in. He was going to be going up against a lot more NHL talent, a lot of guys who are arguably a lot stronger than him. And he's done nothing but succeed on a Northeastern team that has been at times average and at other times mediocre. So 21 goals this season. He's scored at more than a point per game. I would argue, most nights he's been a true game breaker for the Huskies. And I'm really excited to see what he can do to help propel them into an NCAA tournament bid. And if not, he'll have until August to sign with the Preds this coming off season. So,
yeah. Let's stay in the East and go to the ECAC and a guy with maybe the best name in the organization, Sutter Mazzotti. I feel like I need to be saying this with more Italian hand gestures there. He is on RPI, who they're not great this year, but they did just score a big upset over Clarkson in the opening round. A 2023 fifth round pick who has a respectable 24 points in 31 games. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about this guy, Eric.
Yeah, I will be honest and say, if you've followed my work, I wasn't the biggest fan of Sutter Mazzati. I see what the organization sees in him. He's 6'5", he's a center, he can score around the net, but everything else is kind of lacking to a certain degree. Seems like the kind of guy that you could just sign as an undrafted free agent once he finishes college instead of using a draft pick on him, but they've got a million of those, so what does it matter? But yeah, I mean, he's been pretty good this year for RPI. Kind of doing what he's supposed to do, standing in front of the net, kind of doing that Jakob Kondelik role that he played in college. To be honest, RPI is not a good program. They're probably going to get destroyed by Quinnipiac this weekend in the ECAC tournament. Yeah. And I'm really still not sure that Mazzotti has much of an NHL future, but I think this year's been good for him. And, if he can kind of keep working at it the way, a guy like Cole Smith did, who was pretty much a bottom, a fourth liner all of college, then, maybe there's a path forward after a couple years in the AHL. But, yeah, good season from him overall for the Engineers.
Yeah, Nashville loves their tall boys. That's for sure. Another guy who's been pretty impressive this year has been Adam Ingram, a little bit more out west at St. Cloud State. This is another guy, Eric, that not a lot of Preds fans, I think, have been keeping close tabs on, but has done pretty well in a pretty good for a pretty good St. Cloud team this year. And now you're thinking, maybe another good year from him maybe could land him more on the Preds radar in maybe an NHL or AHL role.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely going to be going back to college next year, but he's been really good for the St. Cloud State Huskies this season. He's a bit of a power play merchant, which can be super helpful, but he's definitely increased his even strength scoring this year. He kind of plays a similar game to Alex Campbell. I think Campbell's a better skater for sure, and that's still kind of my biggest drawback with Ingram is just some choppy mechanics there that don't generate a ton of speed for him. But if he can continue to work at those, I think next year he has the opportunity to kind of be, St. Cloud's top scorer or one of, whereas right now he's kind of like just below that level. And then I think, maybe he could come out of college a year earlier, but who knows? But yeah, been really impressed with this season so far, diversifying his scoring and improving and on the other side of the ice as well.
Yeah. And one last college, I guess, matchup to talk about is we have a battle of Preds prospects coming up this weekend. Matthew Wood and UConn are going to be taking on Isaac Walter and Vermont. It's, I guess, epic showdown of Preds prospects.
Don't forget about Ethan Hyder too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Can't forget about him. Let's talk about Matthew Wood just real quick out of that regard, because I think a lot of people had their eye on him going in to this year. The Preds first round pick seems like he's just kind of had an up and down year, but it seems like down the stretch is where he's really started to maybe show signs of, oh, okay, that's why he was a top 16 pick in the NHL draft this past year.
Yeah, UConn's had a weird season. Some nights they've looked like really great, and other nights they've like gotten like shut out by like Merrimack and stuff. So it's just an up and down season for the roster as a whole. But yeah, after he came back from the World Juniors, where there's a lot of consternation about him not really playing all that much. He probably had like 10 games where he looked pretty close to invisible most nights. And it was just like sloppy. He was like not connecting on passes. He was kind of like throwing the puck away out of the zone. Like it was clear like there was just something off. It wasn't like this is what his true talent looks like. And lately, he's turned it around. He's got 5 goals in his past 3 games. He had a hat trick against Northeastern about a week ago. And yeah, UConn's going to need a big weekend from him if they want to keep going. A big week from him if they want to keep going in the Hockey East playoffs. At the beginning of the year, I thought maybe there's a chance he could could matriculate out of college at the end of the season. Now I say give him another year, but all the tools are there. It's really just about, putting it all together, continuing to improve the skating, and getting to a point where he's truly dominating college hockey.
Yeah, still some big things in store for him, and I think a lot of Preds fans have high hopes for him as a player. We will, of course, whoever gets to the NCAA tournament, no matter how some of these games turn out, Eric, I'm sure we'll have you back to talk more NCAA hockey. But we got to talk some European prospects right now because we both love our European boys. And there's a couple in particular that have been standing out here lately. So we'll talk about them in just 1 second. First, I want to mention today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's what brings home the winning trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die in the garage alive and well. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, Eric, let's talk about a couple of Preds prospects out in Europe right now. And one of these guys that we're going to talk about is Jesse Kiskinen, a third-round pick of the Preds this past year. A bit of a disappointing season early. He was, just sort of a middling young player for the in Liga's Pelicans. He missed out on the World Junior Championships, but he moved to the U20 squad for the Pelicans, and then that's where the story of his season seems like it's really began.
Yeah, you're right. His start of the year was kind of disappointing. I mean, the Pelicans are the greatest team in the world, and he was really just kind of playing like fourth line minutes, but not only did he miss the World Juniors, he went to camp with Team Finland and then was their last cut the week before World Juniors, which was very surprising. But even after that, at the Liga level, he was like playing pretty well. I think overall he's had like a decent season. But I think for the purposes of playing time, they sent him down to the U20 level. And it's just like bonkers. I've never seen anything like this. So he's played, since being sent down, he's played 8 games. He has 80 shots on net. He is averaging 10 shots on goal per game. He has scored 14 goals in 8 games and 21 points, half on the power play, half at even strength, primary points at even strength. The other either secondary points are on the power play. I mean, it's just like crazy. He's shooting like 18%. He's dominating. So he scored 5 goals the other day in a game, and he's playing like 20 minutes a night. So I don't really like it's clear he's too good for the U20 level at this point. But like, why not just like give him the rest of the year to have fun and build confidence?
Yeah. This is always like, there's like that one like U18 prospect who's getting ready for the NHL draft and plays in like the BCHL or something like that, and winds up having like a weird stat line. Or when you look and you see like a player who played like in high school their freshman year, and it's something like 80 points in like 25 games or something wild like that before they move on to US juniors. You gotta love what he's been doing so far. There's another guy that I think has kind of been playing under the radar this year, somebody in the KHL, and that's Semyon Chistiakov, who is, as you mentioned, is somebody who has been playing really good as, kind of a stay-at-home defender.
Yeah. The Preds had an opportunity to sign him to an entry-level deal a couple years ago at this point, and they made a run at it. David Poyle's a big fan of him, and he chose to re-sign in the KHL for 3 years. So 2 more years after this. And in re-signing, he had some commentary about how he really wanted to become a top defender in the KHL. And this was a year, after a couple years of like playing top 4 minutes, but like sometimes getting sent down to the VHL, sometimes not always being trusted the most, blah, 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 all this stuff. So now, he has dealt with some injuries this year, but he's pretty unequivocally Avangard Omsk's top defender. He's not putting in like crazy point totals. I think he's got like 24 points in 60 games this year or something like that. But, averaging, 20 minutes a night, playing a lot, penalty kill, power play, still kind of that hard hitting, undersized defender that he is. The jury's kind of out if he ever comes to North America. And if he does, it's going to be a while, but you got to like what you see. And I think he's definitely accomplished his goal of becoming a top defender for one of the better teams in the KHL, which is they are recently on to the second round here in the KHL playoffs. So,
no. Awesome. Here's another interesting one has been Anton Olsen. It just seems like, boy, if you talk about an up and down prospect run, it's this guy. As you mentioned in your latest article, not exactly the greatest season for AIK this year, but I don't know. When they drafted him in 2021, it seems like they had really high hopes for him. Does he still have a future with the Preds?
I will say probably the Anton Olsen experiment is over. So they have until next summer to sign him, or before they lose his rights. Unless like something crazy happens next year, I would genuinely be shocked if they ever offer him an entry-level contract. As you kind of mentioned, started the year in the SHL again with Skellefteå, where he just like couldn't find consistent ice time. Got loaned to Jukurit in Finland. Actually, like played pretty well for them, but then got injured and got sent back. And then went back to Skellefteå. Still couldn't get into the lineup, and then got loaned to AIK, which is like basically in the AHL of Sweden, and was like pretty much benched after 7 games. So, it's just like he's not really like scoring at all at these levels. So like, it's not even like he's doing that. A, B, it's just like his skating flaws have like pretty much stagnated. Like there's been no real improvement in his skating mechanics over the past few years. And there will be games where you're like, wow, really smart plays he's making. And then like there will be 3 games where he just like commits like several unbelievable errors in a row. And it's like really fascinating to watch, honestly. So, I think he will probably enjoy a long career in Sweden. But I would say that the NHL experiment is done for the time being.
Yeah. Sometimes it happens, not everybody can be Victor Arvidsson. Sometimes you just have prospects that just stay in Europe and never come over. Like, I don't know, Alexander Radulov, I guess. Eric, thank you so much for your commentary here today, and thanks for letting us know the latest prospect news. For anybody who wants to read more of your work, where can they find it?
So you can find me on Twitter at On the Future PBR, and then all my written work is at penaltyboxradio.com.
Awesome. You can find me at penaltyboxradio.com as well. Follow me on social media @_NS Morgan. That's going to do it for us on today's Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. Back with an all-new episode and Winnipeg versus Nashville recap tomorrow. We'll see you then.